Oh,
Hey Greg, it's Robin. Can you hear me?
and go ahead, Robin. Sorry about that. My
Hey,
speaker wasn't on yet. Go ahead.
Oh,
hey, how are you?
well, I have a few questions for
I
you.
still can't hear you. It might be me. Sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
oh, you can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's me. It wasn't
hey,
you.
Okay, great. I have a few questions for you. I
yes,
have three questions. One is about me, the other two are about other people. The first is this weekend, which was amazing, and Birch is my new best friend.
yeah, it's in Birch amazing. Like it really,
Oh,
you don't think of it like is for psychological healing or esoteric practices, but oh man, it's right up there with the fancy stuff.
it is
Hmm.
incredible. I can't, I just take it around with me. It's so
Hmm.
incredible. Um, you talked about sage for chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. Would that also be true for Epstein-Barr?
Yeah, like because a lot of times in that realm, like a lot of times they'll use kind of like a blanket diagnosis. It's basically they're all kind of similar. Sometimes the person will show the like in testing that their Epstein-Barr is present. Sometimes it won't, but they'll still have a lot of the same symptoms. And the other thing that I'd throw in there is Lyme's disease. You know, sometimes these can be like overlapping. And so anything where there's like a lot of inflammation, like if you think about it like this, anytime there's a lot of inflammation, the body is dealing with a lot of inflammatory material that then the lymphatic system has to try to like process. And at some point, there's just too much, and the lymphatic system starts to get overwhelmed. And then the next phase is the lymphatic system gets really like sluggish and slows down significantly. The lymph in the vessels themselves get like really kind of thick and viscous. Then the next phase is that stagnant lymph then causes sensory nerves to start firing more rapidly, right? Because of the agitation that comes from the like the tissue toxicity. And then the nerves are fired more rapidly. And then eventually what happens is all of that sensory information is going to the brain. And over a period of time, it's just so much information for the brain to process. And it's just sensory information. It's not like they're having to process people's words or anything. It's just, the sensory nerves are just firing so fast that eventually the brain starts to get overwhelmed and actually becomes fatigued. And so that's why a lot of times things like those conditions and post PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, these are all basically like a brain fatigue syndrome that yes, there's some trauma with the PTSD, but a lot of it is lymphatic function and then eventually sensory nerves. Like anytime you have a traumatic event, one of the byproducts of it is that you go a little bit on like red alert, and that makes you like hyper aware of your environment because somebody's been shooting at you or there was an accident or whatever it was. And at some point, so much of that sensory information is going to the brain that the brain just gets fatigued and just starts to give up a little bit and starts to deplete. And then this starts a cascading effect going on through different parts of the body. So you wouldn't think of like lymphatic function as being part of a PTSD, issue, but usually something where there's a brain fatigue syndrome, it could be in a different several different kinds of conditions. You always got to come back to like calming down the sensory nerves, strengthening the brain, starting to detoxify tissues, things like this, reducing inflammation. Um, Anything inflammatory always has the potential. That's why, like, when we're talking about like bone on bone situation with like the hips or the knees, keeping good proper blood movement and reducing inflammation in the areas is really kind of critical, because at some point the inflammation stops being there and it starts to spread to the body. And then as it spreads to the body, it starts this kind of syndrome that begin its like process. And so like even in situations like that, there's localized inflammation, but like when it comes systemic, it gets a little bit more serious. And so usually, because, you get brain fatigue, fog, which is, you can unwind all of that, but it's still, you're having to really detoxify the inflammation in the body. And so with inflammation, the sage helps right off the bat, but at some point you do need to like support the lymphatic system and also support the detoxification of the tissues. And so even when we're looking at different conditions, a lot of times, even though the lymphatic system might be working okay, it might not be detoxifying tissues quite like it could. And if I remember right, let me look something up here. We're even putting in, yeah, like even in the next class, the one that's for the white light and everything, we're even putting in a Lovage body tonic, like a good, like full size. And part of it is it detoxifies the body. It helps to remove the inflammatory material from the tissue and get it processed by the lymphatic system. And so even for here, we're using it to calm things down so that more spiritual energy can pass through. Because again, when the sensory nerves are hyper reactive, it doesn't allow the brain to function quite like it should. And so even cognitive function or brain function, spiritual meditations and practices can be impacted because of just the hyperactivity of the sensory nerves. And so we're wanting to calm down certain aspects so that the body can process spiritual energy properly. And so after you go through and you do the sage, a lot of times what I would do is you could use like the Lovage as a follow-up. You could give some things internally for reducing inflammation. So, you go down the road of black cumin, ginger, frankincense, turmeric, something in that realm. Even frankincense can be helpful in this arena. And then just slowly unwind the lymphatic system. And I like doing the sage right off the bat because it's strengthening the body, it's toning to the adrenals, it calms down sensory nerves, and it strengthens the brain all at once. And so you're kind of taking the body out of crisis a little bit. Doesn't mean that it's done, but if somebody has like a fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, like crisis, it usually is a lot of fatigue, their body hurts, they have a hard time getting out of bed, they just feel achy, can't get comfortable. Covering the body in the sage, body tonic or alcohol or, any form of that will usually pull them out of that crisis within, a lot of times the same day, but usually by the next day. Every once in a while they need to have a couple applications, but it's pretty amazing actually when you do it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So my second question, kind of follow up on that, a friend of mine, a well-known singer, fantastic person, has been struggling with severe dental pain for a long time and has tried everything, all kinds of medical interventions. And they think it has has to do with a habit of the nerves to fire and refire.
Well, so singer and dental pain, like give me an idea of dental pain. Like her teeth hurt? Is it upper, lower, or is that the jaw, or what exactly
You
is her?
knew you were going to ask. I suggested she get on the call so she could say. So you probably don't have enough information.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like if it's just like teeth pain, like especially if it's in the upper, I always explore the idea that it's inflammation or an infection in the sinuses. If it's lower, That could be like just like again a lymphatic issue, but like in the mouth. It could be that issue. Being a singer, that can actually throw in some extra pieces of where it could be jaw related. It actually could even be vocal cord related, and if it's vocal cord related, a lot of times we use like Roman chamomile or milfoil, which calms down the inflammation and helps to re-educate the nerve. Is she having any sort of respiratory issue that she's aware of?
I don't know. Again, I just
Okay.
have the I wish you were here. So why don't we
Yeah.
just pause this conversation and I'll see
Sure.
if I can get her
And
on.
if it's somebody like you said, if it's well known and everything, I haven't, and we need to have a direct conversation, and like I always do non-disclosures with anybody that's anybody that. So
Okay, that's
just
great.
so information doesn't they don't feel like it floats away or something.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so
And I
much.
don't need to know their name, by the way. Like
Yeah.
we can call her Jane Doe and go from there.
Okay. So the third question is about me and Yarrow. We were exposed to COVID last Tuesday.
Okay.
We got the sniffles. I got the sniffles, sore throat. The other people who started that way ended up in full-blown COVID. I gargled with bay laurel. I put bay laurel in jojoba,
Okay.
put it on my feet every night and every day in socks, and took black cumin seed and seed oil, and there's a C and zinc, and I took a homeopathic, and it didn't go into my respiratory.
Did
It
you
did
test
not.
positive or?
I never tested positive, but I never have. But I had intuitive say, yes, you do have COVID in your
Yeah,
system.
and that's the issue with some of the variants, that even though you might test negative and you're showing symptoms, like the variants, I don't think always show up in the test. And so, I mean, it's hard to say, but here's the thing too, is there's also other things other than COVID floating around. We just don't think about it too much because COVID's the scary one. But
Yeah. But the people I was with that I got it from all
yeah,
have full-blown COVID. So I'm
okay,
pretty confident about that I
right,
staved off a piece of it, but both Yara and I are exhausted.
yeah,
So
you probably got it. Yeah,
we didn't get the
yeah,
lung thing, but the exhaustion and
yeah.
it's kind of a lack of motivation. Like I haven't
Yeah,
worked since
it it
Thursday.
it, it passes, but like again, you could do a little bit of sage on your body, like how we were talking, because that is kind of fortifying. But I would probably go, like, I don't know if you have some form of thyme.
I do.
Even Ravensara can be helpful here. The thyme, again, helps the body fight off any sort of viruses and things, but it also is strengthening to the body. And Ravensara is also antiviral and can be a little bit strengthening to the body. The bay laurel is a super good thing to do. I don't know if you have Monarda, but if
I
you
do.
don't, I mean, you're already several days into it. If you had Monarda, I'd say like be doing Monarda every day, but you're already using something that's antiviral. And so I would get probably a little extra rest for a little bit just to make sure that you don't put your body in a stressed state. But just do some things that are fortifying to the body, without generating a lot of heat. Like even a few drops of thyme, even though some of the thymes can be a little bit hot, they're not like crazy hot. And so should be supportive enough. And I mean, keep putting a lot of bay laurel on, and anything else that you have that's antiviral. Eucalyptus radiata would be first choice in the eucalyptuses, but polybroct or globulus, any of them would be still helpful, including even the ones that are lemon, have a little bit of a lemony scent. All of them are pretty antiviral, even tea tree. Most oils are at least a little bit antiviral, but some are just, they shine. And so just stay in that realm, and something to increase energy levels, so Ravensara, thyme,
So one of the symptoms I have is happening right now. It's like I don't know if it's just like it's very hot here, so that is happening. But I just like pure sweat. I just like it's like a hot flash, but I don't think uh it's not like a I don't think it's a regular kind of hot flash. It's just like a detoxifying kind of. I
You just got hot. Did you turn red or you just got hot?
just hot, just like
And are you
burn.
sweating at all? Like, are you sweating on your
Pure, yes,
forehead,
total sweat, wet.
all over your body, or just your
Yeah,
forehead,
all
your
over my
abdomen?
body,
All
all over
over.
my body.
Yeah. Well, it could be your body's trying to process the virus. So
Like
it's
dripping,
a
like dripping
little bit
wet.
of a weird thing, but like you could go two ways. You could use things to try to reduce the fever, or sometimes like or I don't know that you even have a fever, but you're sweaty.
Mhm.
And sometimes people will do, like in certain cultures, they'll do the opposite, where they go and even though you're hot, you go get under some blankets and just really harness the heat to do it, as long as the fever is not very high. I tend to want to do things just to cut the fever. Like, so if I look that up, let me just look that up real quick.
I've taken my temperature. I don't have a temperature.
Don't have a fever.
Mhm.
Do the sage. Like the sage
Okay.
should be helpful for that.
Okay.
Sage, and then if sage doesn't work, I mean, here would be another one that's a little bit of a sleeper in this situation is cypress. And cypress will help us when there's like excessive sweating. Cypress is very good for detoxification. And there's some weird variations that can happen down in the lungs and the chest. And especially when the lining of the lungs gets a little bit irritated. You'd kind of notice, because like your chest would feel kind of tight. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is, because there's a lot of things that can make that happen, but cypress is one of the ways to kind of offset that. And then the other thing is cypress will actually jumpstart some of the glands. The other thing that you could do if you just wanted to jumpstart all the glands is like frankincense or myrrh, or frankincense and myrrh together, like 3 wise men blend, something like that. Put it on your skin, even a couple of drops internally, and it jumpstarts the glands. And the glands are one thing that we really don't think about a whole lot when it comes to like illness, like things like this. But basically, your body's ability to fend off a virus in the early stages is the immune system. But once it's really got in and starts going through, trashing the hotel room is what I like to say with a virus. It starts trashing the hotel room. Then you're looking at neurological things that, are potentially a neurological response or an endocrine response. And part of what can help us get sick easier or to be able to fight it off sometimes is also the health of the glands. I mean, it's one of the things that if you have low glandular activity or low hormones, especially certain ones, when you're not sick and you get exposed to something, that's part of how you end up getting sick. And so I always like to throw a little action into the glands, and so you could do that as well. Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And
And,
just
feel free to email us about the person. Just get like maybe a little bit more details about the singer,
okay.
and I'm sure we can find something for the
Okay.
person. It's just
I do want to say, just from last weekend's class, it feels like it's like starting to drop in what all this is about. I'm starting to get it. It's
well,
starting to make sense in a.
good. I love that. And one of the things is a little bit later in the year, we're going to be pulling different pieces from different classes and even taking like another level or another step with everything. Like you said, you can kind of see things coming together, but we're going to be using them as like building blocks. So we're going to be doing some different kinds of classes towards the end of the year where it's more like integrative with some of the things we've already learned from different classes. And that was a little bit of the difficult approach with like approaching psychological things and psychological issues is, there is that it's not even that they're intertwined or connected. They're just different parts of the spectrum, where it's your physiology, your emotions, your mind, all these things are just sliding back and forth. And it's hard just to address it with like a symptom oriented approach. I mean, you can do it for some things, but for some of these things, it's almost like you just got to go kind of like how I was saying, it's almost like setting the altar ready for your meditation or your prayer work or something. You just got to get the area prepped for it, and then you can do what you're going to do. And we laid the foundation, and now we're getting to the point where we're setting up the altar so that you can just get in and do some very specific things. And each part of the nervous system does different things to us psychologically. And like once you really kind of unwind some conditioning and start focusing on the nervous system, you can make big psychological shifts by treating neurological. It's neurological, it's a little bit of endocrine function, but you can make big shifts by working the neurology a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I also have the thought, if I take the COVID story off of this,
Mhm.
that this is like there is a shift afoot where the pusher is disabled, and the
Mhm. Yeah,
exhaustion
yeah.
is a welcome relief before the next foundation
Mhm.
is established, that as long as I'm in that pusher mode, I can't step up to that altar in a clear way,
Right.
and that something is being cleared to enable that shift.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started doing this work way back when, I was doing all kinds of things to try to like quiet my mind or organize my mind, and not only did none of it work, a lot of it made it worse. Like honestly, it just did. And I wasn't always doing um, you know systems or practices. I was just trying to figure things out on my own, and making lots of mistakes. And when I started working with the neurology, your nervous system neurology, um, it was interesting because it was more for pain management at first. It wasn't really about psychological things, but as I went through and started treating it, because I had bad injuries that involved the spine and torn muscles and things. And as I started going through and calming them down, I started laughing to myself, like kind of how I'm laughing now. I was like, wait a minute, when I start treating the nervous system, my mind gets quiet. Like, how weird is that? And then I kept just going down that rabbit hole. And then I started seeking out teachers that would teach me about that. And the issue is that a lot of times we use different terminologies to talk about this phenomenon. We will point with different fingers from different cultures and different healing practices and even spiritual practices. But when you boil it down and you start looking at it, if you think about the way yin yang plays out, we don't go into it a whole lot of depth, but for so much time when you're looking at this issue, like even when you look at it like intellectually, you see, oh, there is essence and form, and there's this play between essence and form. But if you really look at it from the point of view of like a therapist or a scientist or something, and you watch the play between the two, like at first, what happens is we're so ingrained in the form that we keep trying to bring light in to like untangle ourselves a little bit, you could say. Like, you're trying to dislodge this consciousness or conscious awareness in the form of the body, of your neurology, of your physiological responses, and also the mind, the viewpoint, the repetitive thoughts, all these things. And then at some point, it actually flips to where you're really starting to be more of essence, and it's always going back and forth, essence and form, essence and form. And what happens is when we start to experience greater levels of essence, as we experience that greater level of essence, it always produces the opposite, right? So we end up going back into the form, and in that point we realize the impurities that are in the form, right? And so then we become self-conscious as we become closer to the divinity of like, I have these shortcomings, I have these things, I have these ways of thinking, I have, whatever it is, because you've experienced more purity and light. So then when you come back into the form, you go, and a lot of times the more the experience, almost the harsher the rebound. And if you're a good like Boy Scout or Girl Scout with how to address these things, when you come back and you go, oh, there's some impurities, you go, that's okay, I'm going to mop this up and I'm going to do it again, right? But when we don't know, you have that experience and then you bounce back and it's just upsetting or entangling, or you had an experience and then it kind of goes away. And so the idea is to almost become like a good scout, so that when the light comes back into the essence, you can just go, oh, look, a deeper layer of purifying the form is in. So all of this breaks our patterns. All of this is like a way of paying off your karma or diminishing your karma. It's really more like breaking karmic patterns, but it's an interesting little bounce back and forth. And so like, some of those practices where they do fire practices or they do things with like the sun or something like that, it's actually tied to this mechanism that we're talking about. And so we're doing it in a way that's a little bit more clinical and therapeutics, you could say, but there is this like kind of emergence that we're kind of working towards here over the next few months. And things are going to be pulled together in ways where things we've been doing for a while are going to all start making sense. Like it's starting to like drop into place where this is why we work the vital centers. This is why we work the blood. This is why we did the brain waves. This is why we did, and at first we just had to play with them all independently, but now we're starting to go, okay, we have the building blocks, take the building blocks and let's get down to business. It's like the foundation had to be laid before the deeper things started happening, so to speak.
So cool.
Yeah.
So very cool. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're still welcome. And boy, you sound like your sister.
Wait, my sister sounds like me.
Yeah, totally. That's right. I said it wrong.
All right, take care.
You bet. Take care.
Just real quick before we go to the next person, just want to clarify, when you were talking about using the Birch complex for pain, did you say that it only works for new pain or less than 30 days?
No, it works for any kind of pain, but it's especially good for acute pain, like things that are less than 30 days. But even like in more chronic pain blends and things like that, the thing like Birch is really good for is Birch and wintergreen, actually. It's very good for unwinding like tension and spasms in the body. Yes, it's good for pain relief and detoxification, which is good, but also like deep spasms that like are sometimes even more than like a cramp. Like, marjoram works really well for a cramp, but for like deep, like tension that's just being held in the body, the birch and the wintergreen work really super good for that. And that birch complex has all the different birches in it. It has wintergreen in it. It has like ginger, it has all the things that would really target those kinds of things. So, the weekend we were talking about using it for acute pain, but you can also use it to augment any other pain protocols. And then also for psychological releasing, when you're releasing something from the spine, from just the emotional body, the mental body, but even when you're doing spiritual like purifications, you know, when you're using mantra or like the purba, like I did a demonstration over the weekend. And, you know, part of it is, you know, how we were just talking about different parts of the nervous system. I'm opening up a can of worms here. Let's just talk about it. But different parts of the nervous system. Part of what you're doing when you're working with that stuff is you're working a little bit and helping to facilitate greater parasympathetic activity. You could say. I mean, it's a little bit complicated, but you could say. And parasympathetic activity is what helps us to release things from the mind. Like it helps us to release things from the emotions, especially from the spine, which deep releases, especially lower emotional releases, a lot of it comes out of the spine. In the very last place it comes out of is the spine. And you could say, I have to like kind of qualify what I'm saying here. When we're in a place where our mind or emotions, our state is a little bit fragile, or it's can be a little bit overwhelmed, part of how our physiology, our nervous system helps us to be able to still move forward without being so overwhelmed that we just shut down and just start breaking down and like dying because we are so like, you know, maybe psychologically freaked out, is various forms of pride, right? And pride is just like a think of it just as like a cast. Like if you broke your arm, like it's not on your arm forever, it's just there for a while until whatever heals, and then at some point you got to take the cast off, right? So with that, we have things that happen to us where we're able to process it. Sometimes we have a little bit of pride that like bubbles up and gives us time to like kind of come to terms with it. So at some point we can deal with it like later when we're in a better place or a little stronger, or we're not in a crisis, right? Because sometimes it's because we're in a crisis. And so part of how the pride forms is tied to parasympathetic activity and reaction to pain. And so if you can really like prepare that part of your nervous system to function well, bottom line is you really start to cognitively process and let things go that you wouldn't really normally let go because we're stuck on it and we just get into this little bit of a defensive mode. And it's not that it's good or bad, it's just there. Like, you know, it's just like having to go to the bathroom every day. It's not good or bad, it's just something that has to happen. I think it's really important to look at this mechanism in the same way. When it happens, it's usually kind of necessary, but if it lingers at some point, you need to work on letting it go. And actually one of the ways of letting it go is through parasympathetic function, right? So that is tied to like when you're able to go and sleep really deep, part of what you're doing and you're having your dream time and you're sleeping is you're processing and letting some of that go. And so if you think about like when something's upsetting and you're agitated or you're really kind of at odds with something, what happens? You don't sleep, right? You don't sleep well. You don't hit those deeper parasympathetic states where you can go through and process it and let it go. And so you can manually kind of make yourself go there because honestly, it's the least painful way to go through and address these things. But Sometimes the sleep issue is for other reasons, but it still can cause this cascading effect in the mental mind. And so, parasympathetic activity, for example, is very, very important. Yes. Thank you. So,
And then go ahead, Denise, then Deborah.
hey, Denise.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking my
Hey.
call.
Hey,
Thank you
how are
so much for sending me the love. Is it lovage? The love.
Mhm.
Am I saying that? And it just arrived yesterday. Do I need to keep that refrigerated?
No.
Okay.
It's the body tonic.
Yes.
Yeah. Just shake it up every time before you do it, but you're good to go. That
Okay.
will last for years.
Thank you for doing that. That was very kind. I'm looking forward to working with it. I wanted to ask about the cypress. Can I take cypress? Well, I know I can rub my gums in with it. Can I take it internally?
Oh yeah, I mean, if needed, you could take actually quite big dosages. I would say uh, I mean, if you're really trying to treat something, 4 or 5 drops is pretty easily tolerated.
Oh, wow.
Casual dosages, we talk about 1 or 2 drops, but like if you start really wanting to treat something a little bit stronger, 4 or 5 drops is pretty healthy. You could do it even a couple of times a day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It is very well tolerated by the body, by the way.
One last question on the best oils for brain fatigue would be sage and
Sage is really good. Rosemary increases circulation and can be a bit fortifying. Basil is a cerebral stimulant. And so when you're trying to increase like mental function, and it offsets the effects of like mental stress, like for example, processing a bunch of paperwork or something, like, how you're doing it and you're doing it and doing it. And then you're like, oh, I got to stop. Like, I just can't take this. That's just mental stress. Like, your brain got, it's just like working out, but your brain, it's like, either the numbers are too complicated or it's been too long, or, basil will help offset that. Sometimes even with the mental stress, lavender can be helpful somewhat, but lavender sometimes I find to be a little bit too like relaxing, where you're like, yeah, I don't feel stressed, but I also don't feel like working anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Or basil keeps you a little bit more on task.
I like
Petitgrain
that.
can be good as well. Even something like cinnamon or cassia can actually be strengthening to the mind. Like, not as quick, but maybe longer lasting are things like frankincense, myrrh, and the evergreens like spruce. Let's see, what is it? Frankincense and myrrh, and then fir and spruce. Maybe even mastic a little bit, but any of the like real resinous like oils, like heavy or resiny kind of oils.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And are they kind of refreshing to the brain too? Because it's like my brain wants to be refreshed, and I think it's probably from COVID and stuff too.
Yeah, that might need a little bit of basil. Sometimes like post COVID, it just feels like you have like you said, like the brain's just a little sluggish, or you just, one of the students was saying like they were trying to answer it and they go, I can't brain today. They were making a joke, but it's just like things get a little sluggish. And so I would say a couple of things with that. You could use basil. I probably still wouldn't rule out the use of sage, like, the Dalmatian sage, triloba, just regular sage, even a bit of Spanish sage, and really like rub it all over your body, salt bath, or I like the idea of a liniment or a ointment and rubbing it all over the body, or just like a bunch of drops on your wrist and rub it together. That can be helpful. The sage, the basil. Oh, and then the other thing is also the lovage. Like the thing is going through and detoxifying the tissue also does calm things down a little bit, calms down the nerves. And so lovage by itself doesn't really calm down the nerves like sage does, or, you know, vetiver or something like that. But it calms down, or it reduces the reason why the nerves got overactivated. You know what I mean? Like, so if you do sage at first just to calm everything down, and then you do another round with the lovage body tonic stuff, like maybe a few hours later or at the end of the day or the next morning or something, it just keeps taking the treatment deeper and deeper.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Sage, lovage, and then and basil
Yeah.
occasionally within water,
Yeah.
especially
And,
basil.
and the lovage isn't so much for the brain itself, but it's like how the body's going to impact the brain. And so right off the bat, the sage is probably your best bet. And then basil, either inhaling or a few drops internally, and, you know, drink it will help stimulate the mind. But then the lovage will keep it from going back to that place and keep reducing why it went to that place. So that's a combination. We are going to be talking about some of these like combination treatments on the weekend with the free class this weekend. And so versions of this we can talk out, like, you know, even more so for different health issues.
Thank you. I'll tune in. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
And
thanks, Samantha.
recordings will be there too. So like, even if you don't get to do the whole thing, we're trying to make it all ready for you guys in booklet form and with recordings and things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's great.
And then go ahead, Deborah, then Mary Ann.
Hey, Deborah.
Hi.
Mhm.
Can't wait for the weekend. But
Oh, good.
and what you were describing and sharing about yourself, that is so powerful. I hope that you guys share that that little segment with the rest of us. So I'd love to hear it again.
Which part was that?
Well, you
about the
started off.
pain?
Well, no, you started sharing about yourself and how you came about to calm down your nervous system and that
Right.
discovery process.
Oh my God, when I was young, I was such a goofball. I would literally try to, like, I mean, this is embarrassing to say now, but I literally used to sit and try to like suppress my thoughts, like, and then when I went to work, I would get like strong, and it would just make them worse. And then I was like, don't think of stuff. Like, I would try to go, okay, I'm going to spend an hour just really trying to not think about something. And it's like, don't think about an apple. 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 And then pretty soon you're like, how can I not be super focused on an apple? You know, it was literally that silly.
But and then how you went to the next stage with where that went to, that is like something that I could hear a few times to really process.
Yeah,
all of
and I would love
that.
to say that I intelligently went to that, but I didn't. Like, I just kind of almost like stumbled into it, where we were just trying to do things to, you know, because my body was, you know, even though I broke my back, it wasn't like my spinal cord was injured or anything. It was really super painful. And even after everything was healed, because of all the torn muscle, you know, the back was really unstable. And so, you know, I was just trying to like manage things. And so I mean, I was trying everything. I mean, I went through all kinds of things, Western medicine, holistic medicine, you know, I just swung for the fences. And as we were starting to address things in the nervous system, you know, because somebody was kind of guiding me through it, but, you know, because I was still pretty young. All of a sudden, it was helping some of the pain, but more than helping the pain, I was noticing more that, like, all of a sudden my mind was getting calmer and I was getting much clearer in my thought. And I was like, huh. Well, that's probably just a weird thing. And then it kept getting more and more and more and more. And then I kind of realized, I think this was my spiritual practice, was actually my injury at first. And it opened up my eyes to something that I had been trying for when I was younger, but you know, didn't go there on my own. You know, I always kind of joke that I was smacked onto the path, not really chose the path.
That's really inspiring.
Yeah.
So, and then on another direction,
Mhm.
you were going to look up what to use to thicken the vaginal skin that thins with
Yeah, I think like what I'm sorry, I meant to get back to you on that. I think the use of the Shazandra, it will take a while, but I think that actually is the ticket.
Okay.
Yeah, like just keep using that over and over again. And then still just keeping all kind of viral activity down at bay. So like the oils that are like kind of lemony scented for something like this. So eucalyptus citrodora, ironbark eucalyptus, melissa, um, lemon verbena, things of that nature should all help to keep any sort of virus that goes like in cycles. Like when we're talking about COVID, it's a different kind of virus. But here, when you're looking at viral activity that's in the body that goes in cycles, because we even look at that for pain syndromes. Sometimes pain syndromes that are neurological are tied to viral activity. And so those kinds of things can help regulate that cyclical potential for the virus. And so I would stick with that kind of realm, and that should eventually help. Just consistently every day though, on both of those every day. Just if it's eucalyptus citrodora or ironbark or something like that, put it on your wrist. If you are using Melissa, I'd take it internally. Like I'd take 2 or 3 drops internally. It's good for the emotional heart. It's good for the nerves. It's good for reducing viral activity. It's strengthening and fortifying to the body, including the spleen. Lot of good there, but whatever you're using, just consistent.
Great. Thank you.
You're so
Thank you
welcome.
very
And keep me posted. Let's make sure that it's getting better. If not, we'll try something else. But when I went through and like looked at it and did some scanning, I think that's your ticket.
Okay, perfect. Love it. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
And then go ahead, Marianne.
Hey, Marianne.
There's so much to learn. It's mind-boggling, and I have experiences, but I don't even have the language to describe what happens. But I've been thinking a lot at the end of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
My body was feeling very. I was tired.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so that I laid on my bed. I was inhaling. I could hear your voice, so I was following along. And then we came to the point where I don't know if I'm even pronouncing the name right. Oil Parcellus or something.
Oh, Paracelsus. Yeah.
Paracelsus.
Mm-hmm.
It was around that time. And we had also, there were other oils too that I felt drawn to. But suddenly I went from being so very uncomfortable, and then it was like a light went on and I didn't have any more pain.
Yeah.
And
I really like that. In fact, we were making some body tonics today as like a little experiment to start like rubbing on the abdomen and in the body, just you know, I'd been doing it before, like I'd gotten some massages with that blend, and man, it just knocks me out. Like knocks me out to the point where it takes me a day or two to feel like I'm back to my alerted self, because I just want to like, oh, I just want to sleep for a while. And the idea is you're going into that is specifically for parasympathetic activity, is specifically to help stimulate parasympathetic function, which is rest and repair, but also it helps to let go of like, you know, the old traumas and things. You know, it's not necessarily specific to trauma, but it's because you're fortifying and kind of stimulating that parasympathetic state. It allows you to release things from the psyche. Like it just allows you to, and it's not like you have to go and revisit it. It just starts pouring out. Like you just let it go. And so, you know, that phase in the class where we went through and we did that last section was all on parasympathetic activity. I mean, that really is about like re-educating the some of the defenses and your ability to let things go. Because if you remember, it's tied to the will to power. So it has a very strong impact on the defensive part of your will, like the part of the will associated with the basic chakra, which is tied to like the will to survive, like your body just trying to survive whatever it is. And so, you know, from there is a lot of physiological emotion can arise, and a lot of just these responses that are being driven, and like just calm it down. And it's amazing how the body just goes like it just, you know, it's not even your lungs, it's like your whole body just takes this big like relaxing breath. And so I always find that to be very, very soothing. And I have this one story where you know, back when I was seeing people in person, you know, some people would seek me out or whatever, and sometimes it was, you know, the husband of somebody was being brought and the husband wasn't too happy to be there. You know, it was a decent amount of that. You know, somebody talked him into it, or a friend sent them or something. And somehow I started working on a bunch of people from the SWAT team in the town that I lived on. And these guys had like tons of stress, and they usually had these really weird injuries from, you know, whatever, you know, wrestling with somebody or falling or something. And, you know, I had this one guy come in and from the tactical unit. And, you know, first off, I said, okay, you know, he was coming to me for some back pain. And I was like, okay, has there been, what's your stress levels? She goes, no stress, it's fine. And I was like, okay, you know, just that makes me laugh because he's a SWAT team member. And then, you know, I start asking him more questions. And I go, okay, any recent injuries or anything? And he's like, no. And he's got a short sleeve shirt on. He's got abrasions all over his arms. And I go, so what's with the abrasions? And he's like, well, yesterday I fell through a roof, and you know, the roof crashed in and fell in front of the, you know, the person they were trying to apprehend. And, you know, we started wrestling for the gun and da 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 da, and, you know, finally got him pinned, you know, and he had this whole story. And then I said, and that's not stressful? And he's like, no. Like, oh, I don't even know what to say there. But, you know, he had the injury, he had all this. And like when he walked in, he was really like his body was really misaligned. Like you could visibly see like he was out of alignment. He almost looked like a question mark, you know, like he was so like kind of twisted. And so, you know, I had a table that I had him lay on, and I put a variation of the Paracelsus just like on his wrist, like probably like 12 drops or something. and I was getting ready to do some work, and so I was turning around to get some other oils to apply to his spine, and he was already up and starting to leave the door, and I was like, "Where are you going? Did I already, did I already offend you or something?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Well, where are you going? We're only 10 minutes in, and I still have some stuff to do." He was like, "I feel better. Like my back doesn't hurt." And he was no longer that question mark. His back wasn't all twisted. And granted, it was an acute injury, but he had had a long-term injury that had gotten exaggerated with a fall through the roof. But it literally was me just putting his body in a parasympathetic state with just that blend. And his body was already starting to let go of tension, let go of this. And I would imagine the stress that went along with it. And also that idea, like if you think about what he said, like there was this thing where like, this isn't stressful, this isn't scary, this isn't anything, and there's kind of like an armor that he had to have up to be able to do his job. And when he wasn't doing his job, he couldn't put the armor down. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to be able to go do that at work, but at home, you don't need to have that armor up, right? And so it was literally that component of allowing that armor to relax so that he can go, oh, you don't have to have your defenses up. You don't have to always, granted, there's times for a guy like that, he had to, but it didn't have to be 24/7. And so his body was mirroring that 24/7, like, armor that was up. And, just putting that on there, I didn't even have him inhale it. I just simply put it on his skin. And it made that big of a difference from him. And I was like, "Would you like a little bottle of it?" And he was like, "Yeah, that would be good." Like he didn't even care about like going home with some. He was just like, "Yeah, I feel better." And so I knew some of his buddies, and I said, "Was he just kind of pulling my leg and just wanted to get out of there?" They go, "No, he felt better. Like he felt way better." So, it was just one application even. I think most times it would take more, but in his particular case, it was enough.
So is it the one oil that causes this, or was it the progression of previous oils leading up to this one?
It definitely stands on its own, but like that whole little series that we did is all targeting different aspects of the parasympathetic activity, which increases your ability to let go. But I would say like that one, that probably resonated with you to really stimulate the process. But I would say that it would probably resonate with just about anybody.
It was so dramatic.
Yeah. That's the one. The reason why it's called Paracelsus is that old alchemist named that Paracelsus. That was considered the first liniment that somebody made. They put herbs and alcohol, and they used to put it in like with ash and stuff like this. But then he would, regardless of what people would come to him for, he would just rub that stuff all over them and then go, "Okay, now go lay down." And basically, he would just put people in rest and repair mode and then let their body begin healing itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
which is also mental, like, you know what I mean? Like it's having an impact on the body, but because the body's being treated, it also has an impact on the mind.
So what does that say regarding the chronic pain?
Anytime you're in chronic pain, it becomes harder and harder for you to go into parasympathetic activity. I mean, that is simple mechanics. And so whenever you have pain, it starts putting your body in more of a sympathetic state. You basically start to go more and more into fight, flight, or fight, flight, and freeze. And it becomes harder because it's like a push-pull thing between those two parts of the nervous system. You're either in sympathetic or you're in parasympathetic. And so if you're in pain, the tendency is to not go into parasympathetic as much, and you keep going more and more into sympathetic response because your body is responding to pain, that then it starts getting triggered to go fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. And so with chronic pain, the difficulty is that it becomes harder and harder to get good sleep. It gets harder and harder to shift over to that rest and repair mode. And so sometimes you have to manually bring your body into that so that it can go into rest and repair mode. And usually if you can get that down, it will reduce some of the pain symptoms, and there'll even be some regeneration. And so when the body is in pain for a long period of time, that becomes one of the goals, like the therapeutic goals that you're trying to do is, improve the quality of sleep, improve the ability for the body to go into rest and repair mode. So when you've had chronic pain and that is, you're not going deeper into parasympathetic state, it just means it's been there a long time. Like it's mechanically going to happen to anybody who's having that pain. So there's no like big thing that it means something, it's just literally the byproduct of long-term pain, like puts you in there. So the more that you manage the pain, the more that you regulate the nervous system, the more you support parasympathetic activity, the more you try to deepen sleep, all those things, all of those contribute to you have a better sense of well-being, having better cognitive function, but also reduces the pain that you have in your body. So there's many layers to the pain syndromes. That's why, like, when I talk about the first several times I taught the pain class, like the booklet was they're not fancy like they are now with Letty's work, but they were about 200 pages. But it can be so complex in treating things that I was teaching it to healthcare providers, and they were like, yeah, this is too involved. A lot of them would only see somebody like during the crisis. They weren't looking at long-term pain management. It's probably more of an approach that would be by a pain management specialist rather than somebody who's just seeing somebody because there's an injury or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Blue tansy, I felt attracted to that. I don't know what that was actually doing.
I have to look up to see what that was. I can tell you in just a sec.
I think that was prior to.
Yeah.
We use it for allostasis
Allostasis in that.
and the parasympathetic.
Right.
Okay.
Streets it. Boy, it's right there in front of me. Okay. Let me get in there because I even have to look this stuff up. I forget. Allostasis. Yes, allostasis, marjoram, Paracelsus. So when you got, okay, so when you're doing that, part of how it's being used here is to also re-educate that part of the nervous system. And remember how we were talking about when the nervous system like functions a particular way for even a short amount of time, that just almost becomes like the new norm. And so even the idea where the sympathetic state, you're in more of the sympathetic state and not very much into that rest and repair mode for a little bit, at some point your body just goes, yeah, this is what we do. We, instead of going 50-50, we're going to be 80% fight flight and only 20% rest and repair. And then even when it's time to go, okay, it's time to rest now, your body is like, yeah, but we're 80-20, we're not 50-50. So this idea, like with this pattern, it's to re-educate that process so you can go, no, let's get back to 50-50. That's where we're going to move towards. So even if you just work that one particular oil with that pattern, it would help with that, reestablishing that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
That's our one.
Oh, good idea. And in alignment with that, and then we'll go get you, Sabine, but someone's asking, would the blend Paracelsus work for those of us with a wacky neck stuff causing us to fail the scaling test?
Actually, you know what I would probably do there is, I mean, it might. I'm not saying that it wouldn't. I mean, things that you could throw at it are possibly that. Possibly the digestive calm rubbed on the abdomen and a bit on the chest, but then also the lovage, like rubbing the lovage in. Like sometimes think about it like this: when the muscle and the tissue is like toxic with inflammatory material and things, even though you're stretching it and you're taking spasms out, still there's like a certain kind of toxicity that doesn't allow it to fully relax or to fully contract, or, you know, it still kind of locks it into this like little bit of a weird dysfunction. And again, going back to my personal injuries, is like I tore a bunch of muscles on one side of my back, not both. And so I have this like weird muscle imbalance that then is compensated for like with the hip. And so when the inflammation gets bad enough, I have to rub things like lovage on these like really like odd spots to basically, if I put antispasmodics or pain relief, it brings me relief, but for like 6-8 hours or something. But if I detoxify it with lovage, like for a day or two, I'll go weeks without even putting anything on it because it just doesn't bother me anymore, right? It's taking out the inflammatory materials, the crystalline deposits, the lactic acid, whatever it is in those areas, and is allowing for some fresh blood to go in and is allowing for old stuff to come out. It's not as toxic. And so I wouldn't rule out putting lovage either on as a body tonic or a neat application. Like, I mean, literally when I'm like that, I'll put like 10, 12 drops of lovage in my hand and then just rub it into the spot. I mean, neat, like I go for it. And then after that wave, I go through and treat it with a body tonic, and usually within an application or two, I'm feeling pretty okay. Yeah.
And then go ahead, Sabine.
Hey, Sabine.
And maybe you didn't mean to unmute yourself. And go ahead and unmute yourself if you did have a question there. Definitely want to get any of your questions. And I just want to make sure I got everyone's questions here in the chat as well. And always, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, you can type into the chat.
Hey, Greg, this is Ralph.
Hey, Ralph. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good. I went to the dentist today and took the first step to get my tooth rebuilt, so we're doing
Nice.
good. Last week you had told me about using Ravensara and Moroccan thyme plus a drop of oregano to rebuild my energy levels. I don't have any oregano, and I didn't see it referenced very much in some of your writings.
Yeah, I kind of refrain from doing it just because if you overdo oregano, sometimes it can cause a lot of heat down in the belly and can cause inflammation down in the gut.
Okay.
And so I usually only, I mean, I still put it in notes sometimes, but I usually only do it like when I'm one-on-one with somebody or something.
Okay.
Like
So
people have gotten a little fanatical with the oregano, like taking large dosages. And I've treated like, you know, they'll just be getting stuff from the health food store or something, and they'll come for, you know, when I was still doing sessions, and they were complaining of gut issues, and the issue was they were taking just huge amounts of oregano, and they were irritating their
Linings.
gut, their small
Yeah.
intestine. Yeah.
Okay.
And so like I don't want to be a contributor to somebody's, like, you know what I mean? Like if I think that it's gonna do that,
Well, I know.
I'll still
Let's not
use it.
encourage anyone's delinquency. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'll still use it, but I usually give somebody like really specific instructions when I do it.
Okay. So I don't have any oregano around. What's the B choice?
But you have Ravensara and you have a little bit of Moroccan thyme.
Yeah, I put equal amounts of
Yeah, I would just
Ravensara
call
and
that good.
Moroccan thyme in.
Yeah, call that good. I wouldn't worry about the oregano.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Thank you.
And so have you been doing that for the last few days, or?
Yes, I've been doing that for the last few days.
And
And
how's that
I'm
making you feel?
noticing my energy level is coming back up. So I'm real happy about that.
Good. And all the other issues, you're feeling good, like besides
Yeah.
the
Yep.
teeth in the mouth, the rest of the stuff going on with your body?
Aside from the broken tooth, everything seems to be settling down very nicely.
Good.
The where my face was sensitive to touch for a few days afterwards has settled down.
Okay.
The dentist is a little concerned about the root of the tooth that broke. He says there may be a crack in it. We're gonna have to watch it.
Okay.
So I will, continue to sweep and do things on some pH things on the tooth to make sure it's in good shape. But yeah, and there's been no more passing out or low blood pressure type events. So I'm happy about that.
Good.
So-
Glad you're feeling better, Rob.
Yes, thank you very much.
So
Question on the lovage. What is Greg recommending, the leaf or root for the body tonic?
most times I just use the leaf, just because the root is a little bit more potent, but it's also significantly more expensive. And I mean, for the most times, I would just use the leaf, to be honest with you. I use the root like in really severe cases, but most times the leaf is pretty solid. Even if you needed a little bit something stronger, you just increase the dosage of the leaf and you can be pretty good. Like when I'm rubbing lovage on my body, be it the tonic or neat application, I'm just using the leaf.
Can you take Ravensara internally?
Yes. It's a great way to do it. Like you can use it topically, you can use big dosages of it topically. Internally, 2-3 drops, 1, 2, even 3 times a day is pretty well tolerated usually. Yeah, it's very good for the antiviral properties to it, but it also will increase and improve your energy levels. It's not like taking like a cup of coffee or something where you get stimulated. You just kind of feel stronger. It's just it's not doesn't make you jittery or agitated, or it's not like a stimulant. It's just kind of fortifying to the body. Yeah. Okay, so this weekend, like we still have a few minutes if you have a question, but if not, let's actually go in and talk about something from the week.
Yeah, I got a question. Can
Yeah,
I order the last weekend's class? I got a rave review on it. It's like, damn, I wish I wasn't spending all my money on a pH class right now. I'd order it, but maybe next month when I get some cash up, I can order the class.
Yeah, I don't think we have it up, but you can always email us. But
we will be getting the previous classes up. We have a handful we're still
yeah,
getting up,
so
but
like within the next week or so, we'll have previous classes up and ready to
Okay.
go. We have
All right.
kits already made. And,
yeah, so
and
if you want anytime, and if for some reason we just don't
Okay.
get them up, email me.
All right. Okay. So it'll be a couple of weeks. I need to get some cash together because I'm putting together for another class coming up here in September, and that's one of my focuses at the moment.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. So let's talk a little bit about. Let me find something here. Actually, we could just touch on something from the weekend. Actually, that might not be a bad idea. You know, one of the things that we did over the weekend was we were working on sympathetic activity, parasympathetic activity. And one of the things is, you know, the pattern that we use to treat sympathetic nervous system, again, sympathetic nervous system activity is fight, flight, or freeze. You know, it's tied to like being active during the day, but in the extreme, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And so you could also say this is tied to like stress responses and just, you know, pushing when you got to get things done. And so what happens when we're like that, the mind tends to be more reactive, right? Like you tend to react to things rather than processing things. Because if you're always in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, you're not really processing things. You're just either fighting, you know, running, or freezing, you know, just shutting down and checking out a little bit. And so one of the things that can be really good for offsetting this is, you know, we did this part where we were purifying the sympathetic nervous system. And that means also fortifying the adrenals, you know, because it's not just the nervous system that we're targeting. It's just that is the focal point. But, you know, anything that system would engage. So here would also be your adrenals. And so, you know, respiratory rate, there's a whole bunch of things. And so with that, we were using sage. And here we use sage triloba. But you could use Dalmatian sage, you could use regular sage, you could use Spanish sage. Clary sage actually doesn't work too well for this. Clary sage hits the central nervous system a little bit more, not so much the sympathetic nervous system. Some of the fancier sages, like the sacred sage and the blue mountain sage, also a little bit more for other parts of the nervous system. So just your good old fashioned sages. And so let's go through and just do a little quick breathing protocol with that. If you don't have sage, you could use vetiver, maybe. That could work. Spikenard, and if you didn't have that, maybe even just lavender. Lavender could work, but sage would be definitely the strong one. But notice your mind. Notice how you are thinking about something. Like, you know, just think of something that's happened in the last like 24 or 48 hours. And then with that, pull out the oil that you're going to use and begin inhaling, and your awareness is on the front heart. And this pattern, we're going to go front heart, forehead, back head, is very specific to the sympathetic nervous system. And when this part of the nervous system is agitated, we have a hard time integrating something. When it's calm and regulated, right, we're able to integrate something and then be able to process it. So it's really tied to the ability to integrate something into the emotions, into the mind, and you could say into your psyche. And so sage is actually really good for this process. This is why, like in the Native American traditions, they sage before you go into ceremony, or, you know, it helps with integration of the work that you're doing. So begin inhaling, and your awareness is on your front heart, the center of your chest. Long, slow, deep breaths with your awareness on your heart. And then move your awareness to the back heart. Your awareness is on your back heart. The areas between your shoulder blades. You're taking long, slow, deep breaths. And then move your awareness to your forehead, which is where your hairline is. And then your back head. Your awareness is on your back head. And then just be still, be aware, just let go for a moment. And then again, same oil, same process. Begin inhaling. Your awareness is on the front heart. Your awareness is on the back heart. The forehead. Your awareness is on the forehead. And then the back head. Just be still. Okay, and let's do it one more time. Begin inhaling. Your awareness is on your front heart. And this time, if there's something in particular that's bothering you, think about the situation as you inhale with your awareness on the front heart. Continue to think of the situation, but now your awareness is on the back heart. Continue with the imagery. Your awareness is on your forehead. And again, continue with the imagery. Your awareness is on the back head. Just be still, be aware, just let go. Okay, we're gonna switch over to the esoteric practice. So join us if you'd like. If not, hopefully see you tomorrow. Or remember, this weekend is a study group session for the whole weekend. So we'll be covering some new stuff, new material. And so hopefully we'll see you there. And if not, we can get you the material after the fact. So